Hello, BookTube. I went to the Brattle today. It was almost temperate. It's still cold, but it was almost temperate. And I've done a small amount of catch-up on work that has been chaining me to this bed. And I hadn't been there in a bit, so I went to the Brattle Bookshop. Those of you who are new to the channel, the Brattle Bookshop is a used bookstore here in Boston. Wonderful place. Tons and tons of bargain books that are cheap for $1, $3, and $5. I had a great time, had a wonderful visit, and I got 4 books that I wanted to show you. So it won't be a very long video. I didn't get an armload of books because I'm trying, always, I'm at war with my book collection. I don't want it to be as big as it is. So I try to be very choosy. The first book I got, I try to be very choosy, and the first book is going to make a mockery of that on several levels. The first book is a rebuy. I actually got this. I might have hauled it on this channel. I got it at Savers with Chris and Giselle Rhodes in 2017. And I did not intend to sell it. This does happen. I move a lot of books to the Brattle, and sometimes they are cheek by jowl with books that I don't want to move, or they, I put something down on the pile that's going to the Brattle and forget that I put it there. They could tell you stories about how many times over the decades I have said, I've hurried in the next day and said, I accidentally put a book on the pile that doesn't belong. Can we find it? I need it. And this was one of those. I didn't ever mean to sell it to the Brattle. So when I saw it on the outside cards, I just grabbed it again sheepishly. This is by Gerald Seymour, who's got a blurb on the cover saying he's the finest thriller writer in the world, and yet he has no American publisher that I know of. He has a ton of books, but this is a UK trade paperback. This is The Walking Dead, a thriller about with a fantastic cover. Look at the size of that gelatinated scorpion, those big black armored ones from Africa. Sheesh. Although I have to tell you, having been zapped by pretty much every species of scorpion that exists in the world, I can tell you, it's not the big black armored ones that you really have to worry about. It's true they're aggressive, but their venom is not quite as bad in a lot of cases as the little ones. The little pale ones are the ones to look out for. but one way or another, this is a thriller. What have we got here? A young man starts a journey from a dusty village in Saudi Arabia. He believes it will end with his death in faraway England, for honor, for glory, for victory. If his mission succeeds, he will go to his God a martyr, and many innocents will die with him. But there's an intrepid detective in his way. And I read it when I got it at Savers 2 years ago. I read it and really liked it. My mental decision when I read it was, it's a keeper. And yet there it was on the Brattle. So I got it again, and I will try to keep it far away from any recycles. And this next one, I mentioned on this channel the tragedy of my Better Homes and Gardens gardening book. I had an elaborate hardcover Better Homes and Gardens gardening book that covered every aspect of gardening, big and small, flowers and terraces, acres of vegetables and whatnot in all seasons in mind-boggling detail. And I got it at the Brattle thinking, well, I'm about to turn a patch of ground outside my house into my very first garden, and I'm going to want a guidebook. And this seemed to be soup to nuts. And then I had a tragic accident with my air conditioner. I had an air conditioner in the window. That was mistake number 1. And it apparently was leaking just microscopically without me noticing. And the one book that it took out, the one book that this creepy, oily residue water from the air conditioner soaked and then melded the pages together, was my gardening book. So all of a sudden I had no gardening book. And I've told myself ever since then, the Brattle will provide. If I just watch, the Brattle will sooner or later have another beginning gardening book. Might even have another copy of that one. And I found one today. And it opened my eyes a bit. It's by Mel Bartholomew, and it's called Square Foot Gardening. And it is not anything like the Better Homes and Gardening's book that I lost. Instead, it made me realize that the Better Homes and Gardens book, although it was exhaustive and very pretty to look at, was way more than I need. It's way, way more than I need. The gardening plot that I have to work with is tiny. And this is about plotting, it's about planting gardens in small spaces. Like the cover has a whole bunch of places, but actually the author is merely talking about this. He tells you how you can lay down planks of wood to walk in between your plots, but he's mainly saying that just one plot, measured and managed efficiently, can provide you with a whole summer's worth of bounty in a way that traditional row gardening does not. I wonder if what is square foot gardening? It's a new system of laying out, planting, and maintaining a productive, attractive garden in any amount of space. The garden is based on a grid of 1 foot by 1 foot squares, with seeds or plants placed in carefully determined spacings, and he measures it out according to the plant, according to how much room each plant needs. He measures out where you can put the seeds in your 1 foot by 1 foot space. Let's see here. Climbing and sprawling crops like cucumbers, pole beans, squash, and tomatoes are grown vertically to save space. The square foot system lets you make the most of your garden space to conserve the amounts of water, soil conditioners, and labor needed to produce a maximum amount of food in that space. A square foot garden takes only 1/5 the space and the work of a conventional single row garden to produce the same harvest, and is easy to maintain so the garden stays neat, weedless, and uncluttered in all seasons. Does it really work? The cover asks. Here's how much you can grow in 2 months in just one garden block, a 4 foot by 4 foot area. One of those, 4 feet by 4 feet. 32 carrots, 12 bunches of leaf lettuce, 18 bunches of spinach, 16 radishes, 16 scallions, 16 beets, 9 Japanese turnips, 5 pounds of peas, 1 head of cabbage, 4 heads of romaine lettuce, 1 head of cauliflower, and 1 head of broccoli. Beginners, gardeners, suburban gardeners with small lots, homesteaders, and large-scale gardeners who want to save space, time, and work, older folks who need to streamline their gardening activities, and busy people of all ages who don't have much time to spend on gardening chores can all benefit from this new method. So, I have a new love in my life. Better Homes and Gardens. Who? I've forgotten them. In favor of Mel Bartholomew. He will show me the way. Because I have a very tiny space, and I am a total newcomer, and the idea of, minimum work certainly appeals to me, since I am a parasite on society, and this is going to be actual work. Not finding the precise right damning adjective for a lazy author, but actually digging in the ground. So I'm gonna try square foot gardening and see if it works. When I came back with this book, I naturally took Frida out and studied the little patch of ground that I have. And I think I can probably fit 2 of these things in there. Maybe 3 of these squares, with a little border between them. Of course, it's too narrow a space for me to walk between them. I'll be working from the driveway, just leaning over the ground. It's not that much ground at all. And I think I can probably fit 2 or 3 of them. And according to this author, if I'm careful and pay attention, that's a vast amount of food in the course of one summer, of one growing season. Although he says in the beginning of this book that he's also a big fan of interspersing flowers with food, with vegetables, just for the variety and the aesthetics. I'm turning over my life to him, so we shall see. And then this next one it finishes out our number at 4 books, but it's actually 1 book in 2 volumes. It's I want to show you the picture. This is Horace Elisha Scudder's 2-volume biography of James Russell Lowell. Can I do it here? Horace Elisha Scudder, James Russell Lowell. This is a limited edition, these two volumes. Biography of James Russell Lowell, who was once upon a time the most famous intellectual in the world. He was a leading light in what I consider to be the Boston Renaissance, that is now completely forgotten. The greatest naturalists, the greatest science writers, the greatest poets, the greatest fiction writers, the greatest history writers, you name it, the greatest essayists, all the greatest religious writers, all were in Boston, all working at about the same time. And James Russell Lowell was the titan among them all. If you'd asked any of them, even the most egotistical, whose name would be remembered 100 years from now, they would all have said him, and he's completely forgotten. And Scudder was. I wonder if we have a picture of him. No, we don't. Unfortunately, Horace Scudder was. He came from money, but he still worked his whole life. He came from a large family in Boston, and he was an indefatigable literary figure, constantly writing, constantly reviewing, constantly editing anthologies for children and adults. He was also, in the 1890s, he was the editor of the Atlantic Monthly. And he was a brittle, carping, hypochondriac, high-pitched, insufferable type of intellectual. Very, very different from, for instance, his brother. One of his brothers was a famous entomologist, and quite the hot tamale when he was an undergraduate. Broad shoulders, pug nose, bristly hair that stuck with him for a long time, whereas his brother, no, not so much. And his period, his tenure at the Atlantic, he was well loved by literary figures, certainly. He was conscientious. He was largely self-deferential. He was prompt with his payments, so his writers liked him. But it's not a distinct... The Atlantic can be judged by its, like any great periodical, it can be judged by its editorial epochs. And Scudder's is not a particularly good one. And this is his 2-volume biography of James Russell Lowell. And when I saw it, I thought, okay, well, this is going to be largely Scudder using the letters and just musing about them. This is not a clinical, find all of the hotel registers, find all of the secondary and tertiary sources, create an impartial, objective portrait of the subject. It's not that kind of biography. This is from 1901, and instead it's much more impressionistic. It's not meant to be revisionist at all. And I read this. I read Scudder's biography of James Russell Lowell. I think I've read pretty much everything major on James Russell Lowell, and I've written about him as well. If I remember, I'll leave a link to some of my writings on him. But the main reason, I read this, and I'll gladly read it again. Scudder he's fairly good company, although he can waffle on. I wonder if I can give you an example of his writing style. I might be able to do that. Yeah, okay. Let's okay. It is not unfair to suppose that the steady application to work in connection with a cause which appealed to moral enthusiasm aroused in a mind like Lowell's an exhilaration of temper very provocative of creation. In other words, he liked to write about what he believed in, but you'd never know it from that sentence. But I will reread this, absolutely, but the main reason I got it at the Brattle today was because the first thought that came to my mind is this makes a great companion to the 2-volume collection of James Russell Lowell letters that was made by the legendary Harvard professor Norton. Just another great figure from the Boston Renaissance. And Charles Eliot Norton was an amazing figure. He deserves a full-length biography of his own in the present day, and he doesn't have it, and I don't think he ever will. He was another leading figure of what I consider to be the Boston Renaissance. And I thought, well, this will make a perfect companion to the 2-volume Norton edition of the letters of James Russell Lowell. I get back here. I immediately look on the biography shelf. Of course, I don't have the 2-volume letters of James Russell Lowell. I did forever and ever. I had an annotated pair. No idea where they are. They're gone. So I have to say now that the Brattle will provide them as well. I'm hoping that the person who got rid of this set had that and got rid of it as well. I have seen the 2-volume James Russell Lowell letters by Charles Eliot Norton many times at the Brattle, so it will turn up. I definitely want it, because this is just Scudder going through those letters and stitching them together with his own narration. Interesting enough in its own way, but really necessary as an adjunct to the letters, and I don't have them, so very annoying. But I'm glad to have this anyway. And also, I might point out, this is a perfect example of what the Brattle is like. You have 1901 2-volume biography of James Russell Lowell, you have a gardening book, and you have a UK trade paperback of a thriller. All in the same day, all in the same bargain carts, and that's just what the Brattle is like. You don't know what you're going to find. So I was happy to go. I don't think I will be back until next week, but I'm noticing now that I'm finished winding on about the books. I notice that we're almost out of light here, and I don't know why. I'm hoping this doesn't come out as dim for you to watch as it is in my own video here. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up anyway. It was just a quick trip to the Brattle. I went there, had some fun, came straight back to the Bean, and now she's on the floor and active, so she clearly wants something. So it's back to the Bean I go. But I'll be back. As soon as I figure out this lighting issue. It's okay. Don't know what's going on there. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.